No niin. Okay, so sorry about the technical difficulties about about this show, but I'm going to talk to you about Commodore 64 SID chip. Most of you might know it better as 6581 or 8580. And there are on the internet some quite crazy myths circulating about SID, what it is and what it isn't. And I always get frustrated when I hear people talking about it when they don't know what they are talking about. So let's just see what I know, and if you think I'm wrong, just stop me and tell me the facts. So let's start. And some history at the first, because it's always good to know the history. So Commodore 64 was published in 1982, and Robert Janus, or Bob, was part of the design crew who was designing the Commodore 64. And Janus was, he was responsible for the SID chip, which we all know now. And after Commodore 64 was released, Janus left Commodore and started his own business. And his goals was to build a competitor for Commodore 64. And when Commodore 64 got so fucking famous, the investor took their money away because they didn't see a future on the Janus project. So in the end, Janus had some hardware design, half-working computer, and no money. And then he made the big bet and started to invest in synthesizer business. And some of you might have heard name ensoniq, which came out of that. So that's the story about Bob Janus. And if I remember reading about some interviews, he said that it was very quick design and there were problems, but you know, Commodore 64 was made in something like a little bit over a 1 year time period or something, though they were in a very rushing it away. So that's about it. And then some of you might know that on the SID chips there are some markings which says 6581, 6581 R3, R4, R4AR, and such things. And some people think that all the chips that have not been marked are R2 production, but they are not. So if you think that your SID is R2, it must have been produced in 1982. All later chips for R3s, revision 3s. And if you are interested about R3, the lobby is a big poster about, there you can see 6581 R3. And later, there was other models, and those revisions meant for Commodore that when you produce a silicon wafer or whatever it's called, and you cut it to the chips and then you manufacture them, you get some kind of yield. The yield means that how many chips are working. If you made 100 chips, how many chips are actually working there to get usable products? And the problem with the SID was that the yields were really bad, so they made a lot of chips, but they didn't work. So to make the yield better, they made the different SID revisions. So the changes in the SID production didn't mean anything about the filter sound or anything like that. They didn't care about the sound, they care about the yields, that they could produce more Commodore 64s. So all this talking about which revision sounds different doesn't mean a lot, because Commodore didn't change anything there. There's some bugs that they fixed, but I can't remember the details, but it doesn't affect the sound that we know. And later there was 8580, because they switched to cost-reduced Commodore 65C, and they overhauled the whole process. But let's talk that later. And the sound differences, you have to remember that every single chip, they sounds different. There are no two chips that sounds the same. And you have to remember that. And the main difference comes from the filter. And the filter is an analog chip on the analog kind of circuit on the digital chip, and that's a difficult thing, because when you do a digital thing, you have 1 and zeros, and that's it. But when you do an analog thing, there are lots of difference. It's just not just the zeros and ones, there's other voltages too. And they vary a little bit. then you get a little bit different sound. And that's the problem with the manufacturing of 6581s. And the Commodore NMOS process was quite shit what comes into producing analog chips. And let's see. Commodore also had at least 3 different plants, maybe 4, I don't know. I just have these examples what I have seen. The plant in Hong Kong, the one in Korea, and one in Philippines. And I think that early prototypes were produced in USA, but I have never seen myself a chip made in USA. And if you remove the chip and look underneath, there you can read where it's manufactured usually. And there's also other differences too on the chips. If you look very carefully, there's a small differences. Like this one made in Philippines, it's shiny. And it also sounds a little bit different. I don't know why. Maybe they used different chemical composition or something. I don't know. But there are lots of different kind of chips made in different manufacturing plants all over the world. And there you can see the picture of the 6581 filter, the filter which makes the SID sounds so good, so nice, which we all love. And okay, you can't see that there because it's the picture is quite small, but there's no differences on filter. It's completely the same. But yet, all the chips sounds very different. So what's the problem? Why? Why is the difference? And it's about the manufacturing things. The layers, when you manufacture them, you get a different thickness there. And when you have more thick layer, it conducts electricity better. And those small differences in the manufacturing process makes them sound different. And that's crazy because I had some chips made on the same week from the same plant, I guess same manufacturing batch, and they all sounded different, and it's quite wicked. And also, I guess all of you know who have a real Commodore 64 that you can hear on the audio output what you have on the screen. It's very leaky chip. And there's a quite good reason for that, because if you read the Commodore hardware reference manual in the SID datasheet, they say exactly that you need to use a different voltage and different ground line for the SID chip. And Commodore didn't. They shared it with the WIC chip, so in the end, what you have on the screen, you can hear it on the audio output, and that's quite crap. Well done, Commodore. You fucked it up. And you can get around with the noise problems by filtering the voltages and doing some other tricks, but it's not something I'm going to talk now. And what 6581 revision is the best? I hear this all the time. Which chip I should have and blah, blah, blah. Actually, the best chip is what you've grown used to. I think the best chip I have is something that sounded like when I was a child and playing those games. I remember that sound, and that's the best sound for me. The best sound for you is not totally something different. So if I'm going to say that this chip is best, I'm probably wrong. But you have to know what you want to hear and what you want from the chip, and you have to listen and think what you want. And there's some thoughts I thought about on the screen, but I'm not going to talk about them now. And of course, personally, I like my R4AR. It has a quite strong filter, and that's nice for me. And what about 858 in the new SID? And for me, new SID is quite boring because it's the same. You can have 10 chips and they sound more or less the same. Of course, there are so small differences, but most likely they sound the same. But there's some differences too. You know that new Commodore 64 doesn't play samples very well, but I have had A580s that play samples very well, so there are differences there too. And there are some hacks called Digifix, where you put a resistor on the audio in pin and to the ground, and you can fuck up the internal workings of the 8580 to produce samples. But that's something I wouldn't do. I wouldn't do that at all, because it breaks the sound. And when you listen to some new recent 2000 made SID songs, you can start to hear that it plays wrong. It breaks some bass sounds and such. And don't do Digifix. It's causing more problems than it fixes. And good thing about, I don't know if it's a good thing, but 8580 is more to emulation. So if you're composing SID tunes on a PC, you should choose 8580 because the emulation is more like 8580. So if you want to make a SID tune and want it that it sounds just like you made it, choose 8580. You get an easy way out. And why I love 6581? This is quite important to me because the sound is more warm and more analog and it distorts. It's actually kind of a nice sounding feature. I don't know, many people don't like it, but I love it when you can distort the sound. And the more variation of the sound, I can play some examples later what it means, but it's more nice. And of course the old classic tunes we all know, they are made for 6581. Martin Galway and such great artists. But why 8580 is good? You know this oomph, the bass that breaks your bones. That's 8580. It's damn powerful on that. And they sound more alike, so if you're listening to 8580 tune on your Commodore 64, you know that it sounds quite close to what the composer meant, because they are more the same. And on the capable hands, it's a very powerful. You can make amazing sounds with it, and you can even make bass so loud that it distorts, but not many people are able to do that. And in the end, it's a bit boring, because you know what you're going to get. So it's about what you want to achieve and what you like. But if I would use a synthesizer, SID synthesizer, I would choose 6581 because there are more variation and you can get more wild sound out of it. And then the hot potato seems to be SID replacement because the chips are dying. You can't buy really any more new chips. They are old. And there are some ARMs, it was the one, some others too. And they are quite boring because they are just software emulators on the chip. And I don't like the idea. The FPGA SID is quite a nice project because it implements the original hardware on the more modern hardware. And I like that idea. And also, at least on the current one on the market, the FPGA SID it's amazing because there are so many variables that you can tune. But in the end, I can't tune it to sound like my Air 4. So I can tune it to sound like many other 6581s I have. But I just can't turn it like it sounds my Air 4. So. But for the record, I use FPGA SID on my using machine, so it's good enough, but it's not the same. And software emulation, we all know that. We all have used the software emulation. And it's a hot topic. There are two processes. They are ReSID and they are ReSID FP. FP is for floating point, that it's more exact and takes more CPU power to emulate. And for my ears, the FP sounds way much better. But still, it's not just the same. But it's quite good, actually. And if I remember the latest Vice emulator versions, they just use the normal ReSID, and it doesn't sound like 6581 for me. But it sounds quite a lot about 8580, so it's again what you look after, then you choose this. But I think we need better emulators. We need more parameters to tune and more things to make it sound more like what we want. So we need talented people on that subject. Maybe someday, maybe someday. And this I have heard a lot from people that they can't hear any difference about SID. They all sound the same, blah, blah, blah. And you have to train your ears. Listen carefully. And remember, there are three types of filter. There are low-pass filter, band-pass filter, and high-pass filter. And they define what sounds goes through it. And usually only low-pass filter is used. I know one tune which uses bandpass, and I can't remember any which use high-pass, but I guess those are used, but I don't know them. But you need to train your ears to hear the differences. And now I have some tunes here which I'm going to play now and demonstrate on them on the different 6581 chips. I have a hard SID here where I have 4 chips. I have 3 different 6581s and 1 8580. And let's just hear the first demo song when I manage to find it from here. Is there any Dutch here? How should you spell speakerhawk? Whoop. But this is an example, and first I will play it with the Air 4. It's a bit loud. Can someone turn it down a little bit? But you can hear the lead. Okay, and now I play that same tune with the older 6581. That was R4, and this is R3. And you can hear it's quite different. And now I switch to more late R3. Okay, that's quite the same. So I guess you heard the difference on R4 and R3. I will play it again. This is the R4. Now R3. So that was the filter. On the R4 it was filtering too much and you could barely hear the sound. And on R3 it was quite clear. And one more example, I disabled the other sounds and now they are just playing the filtered sound. This is R4 and now R3. So the difference is quite great on these 2 chips. And let's try another example. I have here exploding fist. I guess we can hear the horrible default tune now. Be careful. Okay. And now we listen to the filtered tune. Just the lead sound. And this is R4, and you can hear the slight distortion out there. I like this sound. But when we switch to R3, it sounds totally different. Not so nice. And the next R3, it's again a little bit different. So that's the difference. And this is the R4 again. And another example. The lead sound. A3, A4. And it's a slight difference. And usually you just listen to those 1 channels and 1 sound to get idea what's the difference. And let's move to the next example. DBB is not here. I guess not. Okay, this is for DBB. Meanwhile, the Planet is the name of the tune. And this is quite filter-heavy tune. and this is A4 playing. And I have a feeling this is filtering a little bit too much. And now I switch different chip. Quite different. So the more tricks you use on the filter, the more clearly you can hear it. Another R3 again. But I love the distortion. But when we turn to 8580, it turns boring. The distance goes away, and but this tune is not made for 8580, so but you got the idea about what you can do with the filter. And now I want to demonstrate the filter distortion on the extreme example. And first F4, and this is extreme. So you can make it distort quite a lot. But when we change chip to the A3, it sounds quite different again. And it doesn't distort so violently anymore. And for the record, if we go to 8580, it gets boring, at least for my ears. But you have to remember that the important thing is what you are used to. Maybe you have listened all the time to these tunes with 8580 and that they sound correct to you and this distortion is wrong. But another example on extreme filtering distortion. And when we change the chip, it sounds different again. Yep. And then I will play something that not any SID emulator can do. And actually it only works on A4 chip for some reason. So Jeff made a tune called Hard Track, which I think this was on Deus Ex Machine. But listen to the noise sound there. It has some leveling. It goes up and it goes down. And when I change the chip, it sounds much more boring. It doesn't go up and down anymore, and it's not so good. And this is some example when you tune your tune on the certain parameters, it's boring. And when we go for the 8580, it's boring. And you can try this tune on emulators. They can't do the trick either. And I think this was for the 6581 tunes, and let's go to some 8580 ones. And this is going to kick some bass. So this tune calls Fortress of Nazad with Linus did do. This is very good to calibrate your system, because this is the absolute maximum volume you can get out from the 8580. This kicks some bass. And there you could hear that the 8580 it kicks ass. And now I will play it with 6581, and it will sound horrible. So this is an example of 8580 tune. You can't listen to them with old SID. They suck. 8580 power. And this is the maximum volume you can get out of the 8580. And these tunes also are the nice examples. If you have a Digifix on your 8580, these tunes get distorted and they don't sound like they should sound like. So if you enjoy the 8580 sound, don't use Digifix. And one of my favorite 8580 tunes is this. And this is where I first noticed that Digifix destroys things. Maybe you know this? For the record, let's go back to the 6581. Boo. And A580. So you people who can't hear the difference, I guess you can hear it now. And there are also some new tricks, sample tricks and sound tricks, and so let's play something with Elman. And this is quite nice example of the new modern way to program SID chip. And this is just SID playing. So you can do quite great things with it. And again, if we try this with 6581, okay, that was not so bad. But it sounds like broken. Okay, almost the same. Nice. Another one. Let's see if we can hear something like this on the competition today. Okay, my time is almost up, so now I have some time for the questions. So if you have any questions or you want to hear some tune on 8580 and 6581, so now is the time to come forward and wish something. If there are no wishes, I will play something horrible. Okay, there.
Roughly how many chips you have compared at least?
How many chips I have compared in the days? Tens, I guess I had going through my hands. No, not that one. I think I have something like 20, 30 chips. And once I had a batch of, I guess there was 20 chips I got from some repair company, which was, I bought the inventory out, and there was 20 6581 Air Force, the one which is on my hard seat now, and half of them were broken from the tube. And from that batch, of 20 chips, there was maybe 6 good ones, 3 not so good ones, and the rest of them were rubbish. So they are really hard to find good chips, I think. At least the ones I personally like. But I have tested quite a lot of chips, and I have trained my ear to listen to the differences and the field there. And I have done quite a lot of work helping emulator developers and such. But
Is there anything like you can deduce from just looking at the chip because you said that there is revisions like?
no.
So they aren't reused?
Yes, okay, they are, because the R3s are made from 83 now on to the introduction of R4, but you can't really see it how it's going to sound. No, okay, if I see an R4, I can guess, yes, this has a strong filter, but there's something, but I have heard R4s with the not so strong filter, so there are lots of variations that you can't really know before you try it. So you just have to go through many chips and see and try what you like yourself. Because your own ears are the most important thing here, not my ears with what I like. Think about what you like and stick to those chips. Of course, I'm ultimately correct, but you are entitled to your own opinions, of course. Any other things? You want to hear something? Because Sound Demo was asking questions, we now need to listen perkele. Okay, this is quite a nice example because this is marked that this works okay on 6581 and 8580. And I remember discussing with Sound Demon about this tune because I remember you told me that you made this on 8580. Okay, but I loved this much more on 6581, so you can also listen to SID tunes wrong. I mean, composer might have meant something else, but you might like it the other way, so experiment. See what you like yourself. Anything else? Action biker, yes, that's good thing to finish, because action biker is something that Rain Overhand doesn't know. Which is kind of lame, because action biker is one of the best games on C64. And why I can't find it here? Ah, there it is. This is Action Biker, and I'm finished. Thank you all.